Wait, you have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV. Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hey everybody, it's Ken Reed here, your TV guidance counselor on the show TV Guidance Counselor, the show in which we discuss classic television and the difficult viewing choices of our collective past, using back issues of TV Guide magazine from my personal collection. We're still in the pandemic year. I'm still doing the show remote for over a year now, but I scan the issues, send them a PDF, and we do it via satellite. And this week, my guest I'm very excited about. She is a hometown girl, hometown talent made good. Grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, but you've seen her on The Flash, Mad Men, House, Friends, just tons of stuff. First thing I saw her on was this great Scottish show called The Book Group, which we talk about here. But she's always a delight when she shows up on the screen, and I really wanted to talk to her for a long time, so I was glad that we could make this happen. My guest this week is Anne Dudek. I think you'll love this episode. It was a lot of fun. I was glad we got to have this chat. And if you have guests you'd like me to try to get on the show, you can request those guests at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@ikenread.com, or if you want to tweet at the person or whatever, however you want to make it known that you'd like them to be on the show. Sometimes that is effective. Anyone you request, I try to get on, and I do my best, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's fun to try because, hey, I'm sitting here in my house, haven't left my house for more than an hour and almost 18 months. I don't even know how many months, whatever it is. Anyway, I'm losing my mind, everybody. But I'm having a good time doing it, and y'all have a good time listening to this week's episode. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Anne Dudek.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Anne, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I've always liked your work, and I think the first thing I saw you in was The Book Group when I lived in the UK.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah. And I had Michelle on the show.
You saw that?
Yeah, Michelle.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people in the United States have seen that show, which I was stopped in the supermarket by somebody here in the United States. And it was just totally shocking because I really thought the only people who've ever seen that live in the UK or like just Scotland. Like the fact that more people than, like that tiny country have seen it is amazing to me.
Because I think, and Karen Kilgariff was in it too, who was a friend and was on the show. Yeah. I lived in the UK in 2001-ish. So when it aired and I saw it and I was like, oh, this is cool.
What a connection.
Yeah.
What a connection.
That had to be one of the first things you did that wasn't on stage, right?
Yeah, no, it absolutely was like almost the very first television thing I did, almost. And I remember being kind of like shocked at how TV worked because it was British TV, which is like they have different terms for everything. Yeah. And it was a cool experience. It made me want to do TV because it was a little bit like doing a play. We like rehearsed before we shot it. And then I thought, oh, TV's like doing theater. And it, when I started doing TV in the 2000s, it had really turned into TV. But what's amazing about this TV guide is that so many of the actors who are like guest stars on these episodes, they're all theater people.
Yeah.
And even like Angela Lansbury, who like one of the things I want to watch is Murder, She Wrote. Like she took that role on, like having this huge theater legend background and really sort of like reluctant, like would TV be good enough for her? So like I sort of still come from that era where like I started as a theater actor and like became a TV actor. And it's funny to see sort of like the 80s, how that was a much more common thing.
Oh yeah, ago. Totally. It's so the week we're looking at is July 9th to the 15th, 1988. But it's funny how one of the most maligned formats is like a multicam sitcom, probably that people kind of go the most. And that's probably the hardest thing to do as an actor because it's all the hard stuff about theater plus all the hard stuff about television.
Exactly. I did an episode of Friends and I almost died. It was like so stressful. And you would think like, I had been on Broadway. It was like, what's more stressful than being in front of like, over 1,000 people live in a theater, like being in front of 200 people live on a soundstage with like the biggest stars in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
And trying to be really funny. And yeah, I mean, it was just, it's a similar thing, but way harder, way harder.
You can't just move on. Like, at least in the theater, like if you love something, like you kind of just keep going, and on TV, it's like, stop, or like, let's do that line again with a different thing. And you have to make the same joke funny again to people who've heard it. Yeah.
Exactly. It is really like, it's hard. And then, yeah, I mean, I remember crazy things happening. I was on Broadway with a really famous sitcom actor from the 80s. What was his name? The nanny, the guy who played the butler.
Oh, yes. English guy.
Yeah.
I can't think of it, but yes. Dan.
And he was like the star of this play, and I'm spacing on his name, which is really embarrassing. And he was giving this speech, and literally the lights went off on Broadway. Like the whole theater went dark, like in the middle of a scene. It was the weirdest thing. And I wanted to start laughing, and I'm on stage. Like, what do you do when this happens? I mean, on TV, you just cut and like start over. And you know, I mean, like we had to like pretend like nothing happened.
Right. Because the crowd's probably like, is this part of the show? Like, is it one of those, is this like Phantom of the Opera?
It so clearly wasn't. And so it was just the most embarrassing thing. But like, that's the beauty of television, is like, you know, I mean, you can just make it perfect, but then because you can make it perfect, it's like you have to be the funniest thing you could ever be.
Yeah.
You could technically do it 10 times. And yeah,
that's the thing. Since I've been doing stand-up so long, when people ask me about stand-up, and weirdly, when I give people this advice, they get like, sometimes they get offended by it, but I'll be like, look, the great thing about it is this is live. Unless you're exceptionally bad or like the best thing they've ever seen, they're probably not going to really remember much of what you did other than they liked it or didn't. You know, it's not gonna.
Exactly. That's such a good point. Which
is great. Oddly, and I didn't plan this transition, but I was just flipping through the TV guide, and there's a big article in here about Marsha Warfield being on Night Court, going from stand-up. There's like a 5-page profile on her.
Yeah, but it's incredible because, like, TV Guide, like we were saying, it doesn't really. I don't remember it being something that really got into like the art form of acting. And there's an article in here that I actually find incredible because it's all about head of the class.
Yeah.
Did you read this article?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you find it like amazing that they literally, the article is like, nobody wants to be doing this job. They're all coming back to do an episode. Everyone hates their job. Yep. Everyone's bad at it. Everyone's complaining about their role. And like, they just report it so frankly. There's no pretense that people like now there's sort of this, like, you do feel lucky to be working as an actor. And there's a sort of a lot of gratitude in terms of like, when you do press, that you have a job or like what you're enjoying. This whole article was like, every actor hating their job, hating their character,
forced to be there,
so unhappy to be there. Like, I found it amazing how honest it was, like totally frank about like how much being an actor was really annoying. And then the guy who plays the principal was like, he's like, they don't listen to me. My part isn't big enough. I'm a theater actor. This isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah. And that was a really weird thing that happened with Head of the Classes. So the season after this, they ended up basically recasting all the kids, and Billy Connolly came in as the teacher. But because these were almost all theater actors, they convinced the network to let them do every season to do a play in the school. So for 2 episodes, they would just do a musical. So they did Little Shop of Horrors, they did Grease, they did Hair, and the sitcom was the high school kids putting on this musical, but it was literally just them doing the musical.
Amazing.
Like, let's make them happy.
It's like this era where I think the actors truly had more power than actors have now in the grand scheme of things. Like they really, like the reporting about how these actors would just sort of talk about what they wanted their characters to say. Like one of them wanted to talk about like the Sandinista rebels. It's just like, they all have an agenda as an individual that they really want their character to kind of like bring up in the show. And I'm not sure if that's really the way television works anymore at all.
Well, I think because there's so many choices now and so much stuff is niche, pretty much everything's niche now to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these shows then, like even, I always say like the number 100 most viewed show in 1988 would be number one now by far, just based on numbers. Because there's less choices, so they had more power because they're the face of it. So they can. It's just weird how much that's changed in not that much time.
No, they were huge celebrities in this profile of Head of the Class. It talks about Robin Givens coming back from the weekend where she married Mike Tyson.
Yes.
Like literally the TV Guide reporter is there on the Monday that she returns from like an elopement to Mike Tyson. And, clearly you're getting this TV Guide in 1988. You have no idea what's about to happen. That she's probably being like beaten up all weekend and returning, and nobody wants to be filming.
Oh,
and she's been, like probably abused by Mike Tyson all weekend.
Of all the weeks.
I know, of all the weeks. But also like Robin Givens, I mean, she was a massive celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a little more rare that like your celebrity comes from being on a sitcom these days.
Yeah, I feel
in
like
that same way.
The nature of celebrity has changed in a way that when I get really cynical about it, I feel like a lot of stuff gets made just to have something for celebrities to talk about, to be celebrities. So it's almost like because the social media aspect's so important and like their persona as them, it's like, I did a movie. So I could that gives me something to tweet about rather than like we know them from their work. That seems to be the push that we've had for a lot of the celebrity stuff.
Isn't that, I think part of it is that at the beginning, like there used to be this sort of like theme song and opening to every TV show. And you'd sort of have like the still frame or the like, cliched movement, whatever, like moment from a scene of the actor with their name in massive font on the screen. And so like we were really like, you're conditioned into memorizing the names of these actors, and they take on a much bigger kind of presence in your mind, like who they are, than actors are now. There's just not that same kind of acknowledgement of the actor on TV shows at all.
Oh yeah. I mean, they barely show credits. If you look at the end of the show, or if they show a movie on TV, it's like those real fast little teeny things.
Yeah. You just never know the names of any of these actors. You have no sense there's like any reason that to promote these people as celebrity in the same way that really in the 80s, that was what they felt was going to sell the show, is like, if you admire these people as actors and you're watching the show to see an actor you admire, right? It really was much more that kind of vibe.
And they were inaccessible in a lot of ways. Like, I was talking to someone last week about like the late night shows, like the Tonight Show and that sort of thing. And I was saying that they're so outdated as a model because the thing that people liked on those shows was you saw an actor that you liked being themselves, like talking about themselves and like how they are normally, which you never saw.
Right.
Which sounds ridiculous now, given how you see everything all the time. So it's like, what's the point of them being on that show if we could just watch their Instagram live story where they're like in their bathroom or something,
I know, right? It's an amazing, maybe there was something that really has been lost by publicity moving into the realm of the actor doing it for themselves through Instagram versus it really being like a veiled thing behind a whole publicity machine like it must have been the 80s. You really could keep that allure. You could keep that like mythical idea of who an actor really was behind it all. Like, there was
which
a magic
raises their star, I think, too.
Yeah.
Because you're like, ooh, what are they like? I know them from this show, but speaking of which, on page 20 in this TV Guide in the soap section, which I don't normally highlight, but this needed to be addressed. I believe it's the show Santa Barbara.
My favorite
that they're talking about. No, is it Santa Barbara?
On page 20? Okay.
Yes. It's the soap section between Sports View. We have the soap actor who's the guy with the eye patch.
No, Patch. Yeah, Patch, his name is Patch.
Yes.
And wait, is that Santa Barbara or Days of Our Lives?
All My Children, maybe? Days of Our Lives.
No, Days of Our Lives was Patch. He was like...
Then this is Days of Our Lives.
My whole romantic imprint as an individual comes from this one TV show. Like everything I want in a man is like basically created by Patch.
But not only is he in his Patch persona, so he's got this eye patch, he has a boa constrictor around his neck just hanging out.
I know, like just the accessory of the day.
It's like, check
it's
this
incredible.
out. There used to be in Central Square in Cambridge, there used to be a Burger King there. And there was a guy who worked in there because I used to hang out in punk clubs and like at the Middle East and stuff.
The Middle East?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
It was right next to the Middle East, but there was a guy who worked there, ran the register, and he was a giant black guy, and he just had a snake around his neck, and he would just be working and working with this boa constrictor, and no one ever mentioned it. And it was the weirdest. I'm like, how is this guy coming to work every day? I wonder if people are like, I don't want to.
How did they allow that? Yeah.
My only theory is people were like, maybe if I bring it up, everyone will be like, what are you talking about? There's no snake. And then you'll be like, oh, I'm crazy. Like it was too far that no one could believe it was real. But just that's the only other person besides Patch that I've seen just chilling with a snake.
So this reminded you of that moment. Yeah. Yes. the guy just with the snake around his neck.
Just hanging out.
Just with an eye patch too. Wait, I'm confused because now I'm reading. I saw the photo, but I didn't read it. I'm trying to find it does refer to this as a different soap opera, All My Children.
Yeah, because
was there a crossover between like All My Children and Days of Our Lives?
Maybe.
Like, did this character appear on more than one? Oh, no. Here we go. Stephen Nichols. Yes, that was his name, Patch. Okay, and no one is more limited than the mega popular Patch, Stephen Nichols, below, man with a snake and eye patch, of NBC's Days of Our Lives. His grunted dialogue depends almost exclusively on two expressions. Hey, dude, and even more economical, baby. See, TV Guide is not afraid to just like honestly.
Oh, they're catty.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but that's what I mean. It's much more highbrow. It's like, it really calls like when something is kind of like low quality TV, it's not pretending that it's anything other than that. Right.
And they're kind of not crapping on him as much as they're like, give this guy something to do. Like,
yeah, no, they are. Cause they say, will someone please buy this guy a copy of 30 Days to a More Powerful Vocabulary? If I was the actor, I'd be so pleased to get that. Like, like you're saying, like he deserves more to do.
Yeah. I mean, look, anyone who could wear a snake and make it look that casual has got some serious acting chops.
I love the writer's room. I wonder what the writer's room was like. They're like, he just has like, let's like create a character who's missing an eye and he wears a snake.
Yeah.
Like perfect. Those two things, perfect.
Well, tons of people have an eye patch. How can we make them stand out?
Yeah. We don't want him to be the average eye patch soap character.
Because I feel like
has a snake.
Was there an eye patch guy at Santa Barbara too? I watched Santa Barbara all the time for some weird reason. I don't think so. Maybe I'm just confusing them all.
Maybe someone had an eye patch.
I worked at WBZ, our Channel 4 affiliate in Boston when I was in college, and I answered the complaint calls from people. Which was amazing. But so we had to watch what they were showing all day in case someone called about it. And I think it took maybe 3 days to get totally engrossed in the soap operas because you're just like, you have to watch it. And by day 3, first you're like, this is stupid. And then by day 3, you're like, oh my God, Ridge and Thorne are in a fight. Like it's perfect to grab.
I know. And it's like, I remember watching these soaps for years and I can't really tell you anything specific that happened, but like every moment was gripping. You couldn't miss a day.
You felt like you couldn't miss a day, but it was so structured that if you missed 2 years, you'd come back and go, oh, I'm all caught up. Like
exactly, but they made you feel like you had to. It became addictive, the original addiction.
But that is gone now. I think there's 1 or 2 left, maybe, but it's not. It wasn't like this. I mean, this was crazy huge. Those shows.
I know. I wonder if they'll ever come back in the same way. I don't know.
Maybe they tried to push it to the internet when ages ago, which I think was just too early to try that because the people who were watching soaps were older people who were not going to watch a daily internet show.
Yeah. No.
But let's dive in on. So Saturday night, we have July 9th, 1988. This is it's summertime, so I imagine you have no bedtime. You can stay up later.
Yeah, exactly. So Saturday, a lot of this, I was young, so I would go to bed before primetime was over. Saturday night, I would have stayed up. What I would watch now is totally different. Saturday, I wouldn't have stayed up that late. I would have watched Facts of Life.
Of course, this is the best season with Over Our Heads.
It was a repeat, but I would have watched it anyway. And if it was me now, though, I think I would totally skip the Facts of Life because a little later, like down in the channels that nobody watched, there's 2 movies on that I would flip between. One is called Too Scared to Scream with Ann Archer, which they claim was filmed in 1982 as The Doorman. Yes. So it's like they changed the name and then put it on TV like 6 years later. Too Scared to Scream. And then, crazily enough, on Channel 27, there's another movie called And Now the Screaming Starts.
Yes.
So that as like a double header, like Too Scared to Scream and Now the Screaming Starts, which is a British movie from 1973 that says it has superb sets and special effects, highlight this gothic horror tale. So if one of them gets boring, I think you could like flip to the other one. I just find it ironic that both movies have to address the level of screaming. In the movie.
Yes. And now the screaming starts. But how can I start if I'm too scared?
Too scared, but now the screaming starts.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know Too Scared. And Now the Screaming Starts, I know it's an Amicus movie. It's like an anthology horror movie with Peter Cushing. And that's a fun movie. But yeah, I've not heard Too Scared to Scream.
Too Scared to Scream. It must have just been terrible. And they were like, we need to make some money off it. It's like this Anne Archer film. She was big.
They give both 2 stars. So TV Guide is saying these are
not
both
great,
2-star movies.
But I think I might do that now instead of Facts of Life, because I just I've seen so many episodes of Facts of Life. I think even at this point, I would just be like,
your Facts of Life out.
And then I am Facts of Life. I'm no longer just in the facts.
Yes.
I want the fictions of life at this point now. And then like clearly I think I would interrupt both movies for Golden Girls, because that is like the best show of all time.
Yeah.
And you can't miss it no matter what.
It's funny that that's become like not quite the Brady Bunch for millennials. Friends has kind of become that, where they just like the way we knew every episode and watch them every day for hours and hours. But Golden Girls kind of has too, which I would not, I mean, it's a great show and it feels pretty timeless, but I would not have guessed that show would still be super popular.
But you know, like the shows that I really remember the clearest would be this, and also Sunday Night, my choice, which is Murder, She Wrote. And they're both about like older women. Yeah. Which sort of feels like, you know, as an actor myself, that's like the thing you just don't want to be, is an old actress, like no work, nothing interesting. And yet like, it just sort of makes no sense now that I'm looking at this TV guide, because as a kid, my favorite shows and the ones that made the biggest impression on me were about old ladies.
Yeah. Which me too. Like I think I'm 8 or 9 when this TV Guide is, and I'm like, but I watched Golden Girls. Like if you went to a kid now and were like, hey, you want to watch this show about 4 65-year-old retired ladies, they'd be like, I'm not watching that. Like what?
No, but I think that also speaks to just the nature of television. Like that was what was on, so you just kind of had to like try it. Yeah. And now it's like my kids have YouTube. If it just the sound of it isn't something interesting to them, they're not going to even give it a shot. But the idea that like you and I would like as like little kids become engrossed in the stories of like 4 old like widowed women.
Yes. It doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. We don't relate to these people at all. There's like nothing about their lives that should interest us.
No, like they were older than my grandparents then even. So it wasn't even like
I mean, maybe that's it. Like I didn't know any old ladies really. My grandma lived in California. I saw her like once every couple of years. Maybe it was just like our hunger to be around like old ladies.
It was so exotic. Like, what are these old ladies up to? This is, I always wonder.
I know. Maybe it was like a National Geographic to us. Like, here's like something we don't know anything about. Like the life of old ladies. Like, what do they do?
It's like an anthropology thing. But a funny show, like just funny and great, like classic sitcom joke, like the best setups. And, you know, actually that whole lineup, like 227 was great as well before it.
Yes.
Jackie Harry was really funny. But again, that show's about Black people in Washington, D.C. living in an apartment building. I was a white suburban kid.
Me too.
Nothing to do. And I loved it. Like, I loved it.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's like, I always like in this, you know, this moment right now, culturally in America, we're sort of reckoning with like how isolated we are, maybe as white people, and not understanding really the experience of other people in this country. And what's interesting is to sort of like, we're talking about now, like as kids, though, there were these windows into lives that we just didn't see on a daily basis. And that's kind of the magic of television. And it's amazing to me to be reminded that TV actually did that for us as kids. Like we actually got even though it's, and this is why Hollywood is really trying to be more inclusive and really represent a whole bunch of different kinds of lives, because this was what we thought, Washington, D.C. Black culture was like. This is what we thought living in Florida, being, an old person was like. We absorbed that as the truth. And hopefully there were elements that were accurate. So we weren't just totally like being lied to, but you're hungry for that, watching television, you want to see a window into something that you don't see every day. Or
the fact that we had it at all was kind of amazing, because there was sort of a shift in television that happened in the 90s where everything became aspirational. Yeah. And there was not a lot of like reflective TV, even accurate or not, but like there wasn't a lot of like people struggling financially show. So they're all making each other laugh because life is hard. That people just didn't want to see that. They were like, I want to see rich people.
I think that started in the 80s and was a reflection of 80s culture, because right before prime time, like Sunday night, I would have started TV a little bit earlier just to watch Rags to Riches, which
I love Rags to Riches.
Oh my God. Can we talk about that show?
Yes.
It was like, it really hit some magic thing deep inside me. Like that aspirational, it was Little Orphan Annie. It was like, you could just live in that world.
It's literally a Rags to Riches story.
Yeah.
So
that's perfectly titled, right?
It's Joseph Bologna. So the weird thing about this show, for people that don't remember, they were like, hey, look, Annie is huge and Dirty Dancing is huge. Can we somehow combine those two things? So it was set in the 1960s. This super rich guy basically goes into an orphanage, an all girls orphanage, is like, yeah, all of them. I'll just take all of them, which doesn't seem okay. But they all go live with this guy, and Tisha Campbell was one of them. And there's like full on musical numbers.
It was so delightful, but you're right. Like so wrong. I mean, how did this guy, what was the premise of why he was just lonely and he thought adopting like 10 girls was the solution?
I mean, I guess that would do it.
I mean, it is slightly pervy now that we think about it, right? Like,
but it also at some point kind of just forgot it was set in the 60s. So like it was super 80s after a while. Even though like this episode, Robert Goulet and Ed Burns are in it.
Oh yeah. Amazing.
And Shannon Tweed for some reason.
Wait, who does Shannon Tweed play?
She's in this episode as someone called Babe Adar.
Seriously?
So this is
That's incredible.
They learn about the true meaning of beauty. She must be it's a beauty pageant. So she must be one of the judges.
This would be an incredible episode.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I remember watching Rags to Riches and it got interrupted by baby Jessica.
Oh, she was being saved from the well live.
And I was so mad. And I was like, for years, I was like, I'm never going to be able to see the end of that episode because of baby Jessica. And, but I finally saw it eventually. So.
No, but the beautiful thing is this was all going to be like rerun in the summer. Yeah. Like you could just count on it, right?
Yep. You could look forward to it. You're like, we'll see it later. Yeah. That's a show that I've revisited and it's really fun, but is weird. Like, I'm like, I don't get how this show is a thing. Yeah.
And then another weird, honestly, if you think about it, show is my favorite of the whole week, which would be Murder, She Wrote, coming on at 8:00. And I have to say that show had it was the most profound effect on me as an individual of like anything. And I'm not sure why.
Do you often have to solve the murders of your friends and family every week?
I mean, there were just so many murders on my block. No, I'm going to admit something kind of funny. So I liked to write when I was a kid. And I watched the show probably, I mean, when did it start? Like 2 years before this, 1986?
Yeah, maybe 85, 84.
So probably, like around the time that it first started, like after maybe the first or second episode I watched, I started writing my own stories and scripts for Murder, She Wrote. And I wanted to devise like murder mysteries. And I probably wrote a series of like 15 to 20 really terrible, like murder mystery capers that were just a total ripoff of Murder, She Wrote. Like it took place in some town in Maine. Like, it was probably called like Nabbit Nove or something.
Janet Metcher.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's exactly like it was just a total ripoff of Murder, She Wrote. But it was like one of those things that kids do where you're like pretending you want to like play the thing that like is so fascinating to you, which I look back and I'm like, I think that's like a deep seed in like why I wanted to be a part of Hollywood. There was something about this show, and I can't even analyze it now, that I just wanted to be a part of. I wanted to do it. Maybe it was like, I wanted to be Angela Lansbury. Maybe I wanted to be the people who wrote the stories. Maybe I liked the idea that things got solved. I have no idea.
It's so satisfying.
Magic.
Yeah. Because it's so satisfying. They wrap everything up like more than I wonder if that's part of it.
I don't know. I think it also just truly had to do with something about Angela Lansbury being so appealing. And I mean, she was nominated for like 1 million Emmys for this show. It went on forever. And she, you know, like, I think she started this series when she was like 60 and it went for like 12 years.
Yeah. And this was like her 5th career.
It was hugely successful. And it must be like some kindred spirit thing I have with Angela Lansbury where I just like absolutely loved this show.
Did you ever get to meet her?
I never got to meet her. But if you like, I even remember thinking as a kid, like she's the only good actress. Everyone else was like overacting.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like everyone seemed really hammy. And I don't know if it's how the show was lit. I don't know. There was something about it, but she seemed like the only real person. And everyone else was kind of like super actor schmactor.
I think part of that was too, was like,
some magic.
It was guest stars every week. And so some of those people were like, I'm going to make a real impression here.
Yeah. Well, also, big. You know, Tom Bosley was on that show and he also had he has a huge kind of like iconic figure in my mind because he was on Happy Days, which when I was really little, I was like, I just couldn't miss Happy Days. It was the absolute best show ever.
I had Donnie Most on this show.
Really?
Yeah. He's an interesting guy. He has a big band now, like a 12-piece big band.
Seriously?
I was singing. Yeah. He always wanted to be a singer. So that's what he does.
It's so funny because I know that even that show was filmed in the 80s, but like it was set in the 50s. It's interesting. Rags to Riches, like all these shows that we loved in the 80s were set like in the past in this. I don't know if there was some like similarity to the 50s and the 80s that made sense.
There was definitely socially, like it was certainly like a weird, I think Reagan ushered in this like good old days kind of like false sense of everything's great kind of suburbia thing was part of it. Cause one of the things that I always find interesting is we had a resurgence of the magical beings I can't tell anyone about shows. Cause in the 50s you had like My Favorite Martian, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, My Mother the Car. And then in the 80s we had them again with like Alf, Out of This World. So it was like this weird thing where they're like, we have to keep secrets from our neighbor. Like it was just a lot of weird stuff that was parallel. And I think another big piece of it is nostalgia really was invented in the 70s. That was like where that with Grease and American Graffiti and those 20-year cycles of people back at their own youth. So as we went into the 80s, all of a sudden the people making stuff grew up in the 60s. So they were all like making The Wonder Years and Rags to Riches and Dirty Dancing. It's like, here's when I was young. I think, because it was the only way we could also see stuff with kids in it. Because normally kid stuff wasn't set contemporary for whatever.
You're making so many good points. Exactly. So as a kid, you're watching the shows with kids, which would mean it took place like 20 something years ago.
Yeah. Because adults don't want to write for kids that weren't them, I guess, then, because it'd be hard to write for like,
you know, it's so funny. I've noticed that now, like if I'm asked to read for some role where I'm the mom, the name, like, you know, the girls I grew up with, like people my age were named like Jennifer or Nicole or Kristen or something like
Stacey.
that. But these characters are always named names that are like my mom's generation. Like I don't know anyone my age who's named like
Gertrude,
like Donna. Yeah. Like no one has these names anymore.
I wonder if it's like an old script that's been hanging around forever.
But it's like the writers are my age, but they're thinking when they were kids, the moms were all named like Debbie and Donna. And that's so in their mind, they're trying to imagine a childhood that isn't topical anymore.
Yeah.
And the best shows are really written about, like, when you really place it in the era when you were a kid, that's when you can like write vividly about it.
Right. And you have that distance where you can make it, make it a little more interesting, so you can kind of comment on it and stuff as well. Because nothing is worse than like a middle-aged dude trying to write hip contemporary what the teens are doing stuff, because then you end up with like Saved by the Bell.
I know.
It's just like kids.
It's just wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I think, Mad Men was Matthew Weiner would talk about. That was his childhood. And you do need to have that perspective. You go through life and then you see those years that were formative to you in a really profound, interesting way. You just can't do that to like I can't write what my kids are experiencing right now. I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I can't put myself into how they see the world. It would be foolish for me to do it. They watch some cool television that's about kids. And I'm like, who's writing this? Because it's really like, they've got to be pretty young. They've got to have a good pulse on.
To be able to tap into that.
Exactly.
Still.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I think kids are a little savvier now, and then that like nostalgia window of 20 years has slowly gotten smaller, so that it's like 5 years ago or something.
Maybe
less.
But I feel like BuzzFeed as a thing only exists for that nostalgia that you're talking about. It's like, here's a list of like whatever it is, funny thing is going to make you laugh about your childhood. Right. And we're so hungry for that. I think TV in the 80s, TV was serving that purpose for people. Especially these shows, these rags to riches shows that were set in the 60s or Happy Days. It did for the adults watching those shows. It had that sort of BuzzFeed.
Sunday night, even, Family Ties is on. And that show, although quintessentially 80s, is about 60s boomers who now have kids in the 80s and dealing with that 80s versus 60s hippie ideal.
And I would have flipped, to be honest, because Family Ties is on at the same time as Murder, She Wrote. That would have been tough. I would have had to flip back and forth, especially it was the episode when Michael J. Fox has to do ballet. Mm-hmm. That was like the best episode I ever watched in my life. I'm not sure which one is on.
With Courtney Cox is in this one.
Yes, with Courtney. Yes. Okay, yeah. And she becomes like his this is interesting. It's dealing with feminism, because it's like the one where she becomes like the old-fashioned girlfriend.
The Stepford girlfriend, they call it.
They call it Stepford, but I think it is this like tension women had about like joining the workforce. Are you going to take on these male characteristics, or are you going to be this like old-fashioned thing?
Which was perfect for Michael J. Fox's character, because it was that sort of throwback. Here's what a man does. It's the, Republican guy, which to be the opposite of his parents. So he was
but you know what I love? I always talk about Family Ties now, because everyone talks about our country being so fractured and conservatives and liberals can't be friends. I'm like, remember Family Ties where they were like all in the same family?
Yeah.
It was like everyone just accepted that someone else had a different perspective and you loved them and they were all family. And it was very like, it was kind of this amazing idea that we just don't have anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about Trump like tearing people's families apart because of political beliefs. Right. And here's this show that the whole premise was about people coexisting in one family this way.
It gave you a fulcrum for tension and stories without being like, I want you dead kind of stuff. It was like, hey, we disagree here. Which even All in the Family was like that as well, in just the flip of it. But it was still, to your point, ultimately, we're family. It was kind of the whole underlying thing, regardless, was sort of the thing. And I don't know if there's nothing to reflect that now, or if just they don't think people find that interesting now, maybe, or it's harder to do. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think so much we're so conditioned for news to be entertainment in a way, like,
yeah, for sure.
So it might be, I think it's just harder for us to step outside of a set of political beliefs and really kind of find it interesting to find common ground with another person. It's more interesting to be involved in the debate at this point.
It's become sports. Like I have a theory that sort of the divide, someone much smarter than me could do something with this, but the sort of rise of televised national team sports directly goes side to side with the splitting of politics. So it's people being like, really like, my team wins. And it's not so much that they want to win, they want the other team to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I blame Newt Gingrich for
for sure.
beginning that, which might be around the same time as like televised sports, but it really was like, we're good. Like as a political party, our objective is to win.
Yes.
And there's playing dirty is a part of it, and breaking the rules is a part of it, and finding a way around like what's decorum is a part of it. It's like wrestling, right? Yeah. Was there any wrestling on? I was watching prime time, but
that would have been in the Sunday morning. It was on USA Network, I think. And once a month on Saturdays, it was in the Saturday Night Live slot, but I don't think it was this month.
Yeah. But it was like, the villain always like flouted the rules. You know what I mean? It was like, here's the rules, but like, you're going to go outside of them and then you're going to win. And that's entertainment. And that became the reality politically.
Because it's that wish fulfillment too. Like, man, I wish I could just be like, I don't care. I'm going to do what I need to, like that sort of, but it also was like, I feel like politically people were like, hey, we both want us to get to this place at the top of this mountain. We have an idea of how to get there and you have a different idea of how to get there, but we still both agree this is what we want. And it became, we have two totally different places we even want to get to. So there's almost, we can discuss common ground because we're talking about two totally different things, sort of.
There's no common goal. It's like two absolutely distinct goals, and there's going to be one winner and one loser, and that's just life. Which
would make it really hard for a show like Family Ties to work now. It's
because you'd have to, like, Michael J. Fox would be the loser of his family, or the parents would be like, they all have to have a common goal at the end of the day. You're absolutely right. I mean, would even Family Ties be a show that they would like play in reruns now? Is it even on any streaming network for people to watch? Would anyone watch it?
Not really. And it was massive. It was such a huge, huge show that I had Scott Valentine on, who was Nick on Family Ties.
Oh, wow.
And Scott's an old, like a total theater actor, like went to Juilliard and all this stuff. And he's like, and then I'm on TV going, hey, which he's like, it's a good gig, whatever.
That's the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. But Matt, like such a huge show and the numbers were huge. And most people probably don't even know Courtney Cox was on that show for 2 seasons and she's massive from Friends. So, but she was one of those people that NBC loved. They kept putting her in shows. They were like, something's going to work. She was in a show called Misfits of Science. She was in a bunch of pilots. Like there's a few people like that John Cryer's one of them. George Clooney was one. Something's going to work here. I don't know if you could do Family Ties now, but I've rewatched it. It holds up. It's still a funny, sweet show. And
Michael J. Fox has like unparalleled charisma.
Yes.
He has a magic, I mean, that's so much of what this TV is. There are certain actors that just leap off the screen and you're just so compelled by them. Angela Lansbury, we talked about Sunday night, same time, head to head with Michael J. Fox, like two of the most, to me, charismatic, interesting actors in their own. I mean, Angela Lansbury is not a sitcom actress, but like in their own like just absolute masters, both of them.
Yeah, it could be like she was in, there's a really weird movie called The Company of Wolves. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a Neil, what the hell's his name? He did, he's a British director. He did In Dreams and a bunch of other stuff. He's like a really kind of artsy director. And it's this sort of really bizarre retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. And Angela Lansbury is in it as like the grandmother.
Yeah.
And she did that movie the same year that she started doing Murder, She Wrote. And I'm like,
oh, weird.
2 things the same year. I couldn't think of more different things, but she's perfect in both of them. Like she's great.
Yeah.
So this is also the time when you kind of had to be a movie actor or a TV actor. And if you were older, it was because your movies were over and you were going back to TV, or you were like trying to get away from TV. So it was.
I wonder, I think like I saw an interview with her once where she talked about wanting to do TV. And, even like when I first came out to Hollywood, I remember seeing a list on a casting director's wall, and it was a list of actors who were film only. And this was a big thing. It was like, are you going to do TV? And I was like, I mean, just to hire me for anything.
I want a job.
That was the idea that you were like a film only actor was, I don't think that exists really anymore because TV has become such a highbrow thing. But But imagine Angela Lansbury, who, you know, she was like a Broadway star. She's taking like 10% of the gross of like a Broadway house. She's in like amazing movies, one of which is on Tuesday night, The Long Hot Summer, with Orson Welles, Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward. I'd watch that Tuesday night. She's doing that kind of work. And then she claims she just decided she wanted to do something long-term. She wanted to follow a character for a long time and do television.
I guess
and I wonder how, well, I really wonder, and I don't mean this as any disrespect, but how much of that story is kind of the publicity thing she had to kind of put it that way, or what it was that made her really want to do television at a time when, you know, it was like a big deal for someone of that kind of class of actor to do something that was seemingly beneath
a step down. Yeah.
Artistically speaking. Yeah.
It's like I had Jane Seymour on, and Jane, when she did Dr. Quinn, she was literally like, I needed money. They told me it would never go to series. I was doing movies. I was like, and then it was on for 12 years. So it's like, and
it was a really good idea, right?
Yeah,
like that's the thing is like Angela, like it was turned out to be great to do TV.
Yeah. I think too, a lot of people too look for the stability, like of not like, I don't have to scramble for my next gig. Like I know what I'm doing. That's got to be somewhat, especially when you get older, that has to be appealing. But again, those things have essentially disappeared now, unless you're on like Homicide or one of those CSI shows that are on forever. There's no long shows like that now.
Yeah. I also find it amazing though, in an era where like you think of like, opportunities for women being so lousy, that she was the lead, the star of a TV show all about her that ran for 12 seasons. You'd also have to, as a woman, look at that. And also an old woman, like, you know,
I
don't know.
And literally a show too, that it wasn't like, there were some reoccurring people like to your point, Tom Bosley, not that he's some young stud, but she's literally anchoring every episode because it's essentially a completely different cast every week. Except for her.
I think at a point, didn't she get tired and she kind of like bowed out, and they tried to give like other people more to do because she was like, I can't do 12 seasons. It's crazy. It's
filming a movie every week basically for that show, which is,
well, yeah. I mean, like when I did House with Hugh Laurie, and granted he was like a lot younger, he like that being the number one who's really in every scene like that, it does get like, you see how much work that is. It is just absolutely backbreaking.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see that because it's like, oh, it's an hour show. You're watching it and everyone loves you. And you're, that was like the number one show in the world when I was on it at that time. And it's like, he should be, he was like, everyone thinks this is the absolute best job in the world. And it is. Like the writing is amazing. I love everything about it. It's just, there's so much to do. The days are so long, and to be in every single scene. I think of like Angela Lansbury doing that. You understand why you want to like take a break. And now this sort of bring it full circle, the cast of head of the class.
Yes, exactly.
Like being so whingy and whiny about like having to come back and do an episode.
There's 40 of us here. Yeah.
I mean, I honestly love how TV Guide like just is so honest about it. They're like, no one wants to be at work. Like here are like the biggest stars in the world, and like they hate their job this week. And like
let me profile. Yeah. They're making
profile everything they're complaining about.
Yep. And they're happy to complain about it. So that's Sunday. What hit you on Monday?
So Monday, there's an ABC News special. And wait, let me just, this I really want to watch, only out of like my own kind of like pop culture interest. Oh wait, where is it? The ABC News special. Oh yeah. Drugs. Why This Plague is what it's called. Like what a great title. Drugs, a plague upon the land.
little heavy.
I totally want to watch this. A report from April that was repeated Saturday examined the magnitude. Wait, that was repeated Saturday, but this is on Monday night, ABC News special. A report from April examined the magnitude of America's drug problem. This follow-up examines the hows and whys of the epidemic and considers possible solutions. So I'm so fascinated to know how they wanted to solve drugs. in 1988. It's a plague, executive producer Av Weston says, but it is not a hopeless situation we should walk away from. Peter Jennings anchors the hour in which the network and affiliate correspondents outline the history of drug use in America, from the cocaine-based products as medical cure-alls in the early 1900s to the recent development of crack. I love that. The recent development.
It's new. But that was a big thing. Because first of all, the little graphic here is amazing because it has that thing that anything that talked about drugs when we were growing up did, where it just went, oh, here's all drugs. Everybody has everything. Like a drug dealer would be like, here's a suitcase full of everything.
Like, with like the needles sticking out of it.
There's like pills. There's a joint there. Like it's just like, yeah, I got full service. This was the just say no thing was huge. And crack did become a major issue. There was in 1990, I think, HBO did that documentary High on Crack Street in Lowell, Mass, about the boxer.
Exactly, yes.
And it was like, people were like, what is happening? So people got just more aware of stuff. And a lot of stuff had been around forever. I mean, heroin was a big problem in the 60s.
Yeah, but I'm also like, I'm so interested in how the media presented drugs. And just from my own kind of like nerdy fascination with a lot. I mean, I truly believe a lot of what we're dealing with from, this whole year, the summer of George Floyd, understanding that Black people in America, so much of what's been going on is this way we dealt with drugs and the laws and the attitudes we had towards people who were dealing drugs or using drugs or whatever this was. Bricks were laid, like a long foundation of making this like just a criminal problem that doesn't make any sense, is a totally racist kind of issue. So I would love to watch this news special and sort of see like, how are they spinning this? Like what is it about drug use that they're sort of like, it's so evil, it's a plague, it's a, it'd be just fascinating to see some of this media coverage, to sort of see like, what's the foundation for all of our psychology on how bad it is to use drugs or how bad it is to deal drugs, or like, what's the problem? Like, what's the foundation for sort of the current moment we're in right now politically? It all started, I mean, before this year, but like you're saying, this is when it became this massive kind of thing in all our minds that like bad people are using and dealing drugs. It's like, make sure everyone knows they're bad.
Oh yeah. And again, I think it was a 50s mentality, because like, if you look at Dragnet, like the 50s show, the way they handled like hippies and beatniks, it was like these dope heads. They're like, it was really black and white, literally, like everybody's wrong. And that was sort of the approach the government took at the time. This article about this does seem to have a little bit more nuance, which is good, where they're talking about, poor neighborhoods, and then paralleling, which actually surprised me, cocaine use, which like every white collar rich dude on Broadway on Wall Street in 1988 was going crazy with, versus the same exact drug in a different form, which was crack. And those people are going to jail for their whole lives. And these other people are getting slaps on the wrist. So I think people were a little bit aware, but yeah, I'm curious to watch this.
Yeah,
too.
I want to watch this too, because it does say the anti-drug efforts like Operation Zero Tolerance, a controversial, and at the time, amazing to say, controversial government program in which boats suspected of carrying drugs are seized.
Did you have a DARE officer come in your school when you were growing up?
Probably. I remember being terrified of drugs.
Same.
I knew about drugs and they were like the scariest thing ever. I was like a just say no kid. I was like, I saw the cracked egg. This is your egg on drugs commercial. That's maybe why I want to watch this so badly, is because this was like nuclear war. It was just one of the things in my head that was like terrifying.
Once it gets you, like we would have like, they'll come to the school and they'll give it to you and they'll tell you it's candy and then you're hooked. It's done. You're done. Like that was just constantly.
There's this urban legend around kids using drugs like by mistake that we knew, right, when we were kids. Like my son, he's just about to go into middle school, like really for the first time in a few weeks, because it's been closed.
Right.
For COVID all year, but he was getting some information from an older kid, and he's like, "Mom, like there are people who try and get you to take drugs in middle school. And I'm like, they do? Like who? He's like they try and like hide it in your food. That's what I was told. And I was like, they do? Like
Tell me more.
I was like, tell me more about this. It's like the cafeteria workers. And I was like, oh my God, no.
That's a twist that was due.
I know, I was like, really? But there is this like, this way that we talk about drugs that we absorbed as kids, that like kids are still absorbing, that like someone's going to try and trick you into doing it. And it's the absolute worst thing that could ever happen if you get tricked into using drugs. Like some evil person who's going to like, I don't know, slip it into food or come to your school with like a suitcase and there's and you're going to like take it.
Oh no, I'm sucked in. Which is funny. I'm like, if you've ever met drug addicts or known them, they're not giving you some. Like they're not trying to trick you into taking them. They're keeping them for themselves. But it's a very like 1930s outlook on like, there was, have you ever seen that old movie Reefer Madness where they're like, they'll hook you on this and then you thought it was a regular cigarette. Now you're done. Like it's funny that it's almost 100 years later and kids are still getting that kind of stuff.
You know what? Yeah, it is, because I was also, when I was looking at this TV guide, like that's a primetime thing and there weren't many options to watch. Like my kids don't really, like I get my news and my news analysis mostly from my phone. Like I'll read The Atlantic, I'll read this, I'll read that. And I'm not really watching a lot of news in front of my kids. They're not really seeing like what the national dialogue is on this issue or that issue the way that we did, because something like this would be on Monday night at 8 and the whole family would watch it and be like, drugs. And what do we all think of drugs? Like it was no,
let's
you know
talk
what I mean?
about this.
Yeah. And in my head, I was like, well, maybe this is why my generation, like we knew about, nuclear war, we knew about drugs, and these were scary things, is because there wasn't this sort of segregation of like what the kids watch on Tuesday night as opposed to the adults. Like I would have probably watched this with my parents as a kid, honestly.
Yeah, because you had to.
I still want to watch it. Yeah.
It was true broadcasting. The whole family used to watch together. Like we'd watch the news eating dinner or whatever, like it was just,
exactly. I did that too. My dad would watch the news and
get the little TV.
Anyway, that was Monday night. Yeah. So Tuesday night, there is the Long Hot Summer, which I would revert to, but I have this real fascination about this 3-star movie called Hardhat and Legs.
Yes.
I think I want to watch it because there's nothing else like that appealing on. And listen to this. It's on channel 25, which was just the weirdest channel growing up in Boston. Like, I don't even know what like weird stuff was on that all the time. Comedy drama, 2 hours, 3 stars, Hardhat and Legs, made in 1980. So it's a little bit retro, even for 88.
Little disco.
Romance with a divorcee complicates a construction worker's life in this TV movie, which was shot in New York. Exciting. And written by Garson Kanin, as if we know who this is, and Ruth Gordon. In parentheses, Mrs. Kanin. It's so old fashioned, right? Let's just call her Mrs. Kanin. Mrs. Kanin wrote the script. Sal is played by Kevin Dobson. I don't know any of these. Oh, Sharon Glass.
Sharon Glass.
We know her. But I love that Bobby Short is playing himself. And I have no idea who Bobby Short is.
Classic Bobby Short move to play himself. I have no idea who he is.
But I like that that's like part of the allure for you, is that Bobby Short is playing himself. I just love that it's called...
Interesting. Hardhat and Legs is a great title.
I love the title. That's what I'm saying. Hardhat and Legs. It's such a good name for a movie, right?
Ruth Gordon was in Harold and Maude, if you've ever seen that.
Oh, yeah.
She was from Brookline, actually. Brookline, Mass.
Oh, and, seriously?
Yeah. And she has a very heavy Boston accent once you know. It's like really heavy. Like a classic old lady Boston accent, like Paula. And there used to be a movie theater at Allston, Mass, which is like a Staples or something now. But they played Harold and Maude every week. And she would go and sit in the audience sometimes and just like freak people out, because it's like she'd sneak in when it was dark and there'd be college kids in there getting high or whatever. And then the lights would come up and she's just sitting there like, how you doing? Like,
oh my God.
She was like a really, by all accounts, like a real character of a lady.
Mrs. Kanin.
I know.
Mrs. Kanin.
I'm just Mrs. Garrison Kanin.
I know, but do you think this is maybe an autobiographical between Garson Kanin and Ruth Gordon? Was she Legs?
She's probably Legs.
He's a Hardhat. Was he originally Hardhat? Was she maybe married? We should look this up and see, was she married before him?
Now I need to look this up.
This might be their autobiographical
origin story, how they fell in
origin
love.
story.
Construction workers' life.
Hardhat and Legs.
I just want to know, like, they pitch this like, all right, network guys, here's what I got for you. Look, what's huge now? Construction workers, right? Everybody does that. We make it romantic. Everybody can watch that.
Well, it's dealing with divorce, which
Yes.
is a big thing. So topical.
Yep.
Right? Like this was a new societal complication. How do you romance a divorcee?
Do you find love again? Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? This was
here's
a
the
new
clincher.
idea.
I talked to Bobby Short. He's into it. He's going to play himself. You can't go wrong with that.
They're like, okay, we're going to greenlight it, but only if Bobby Short
If you get Bobby Short
is
attached,
playing himself.
we're in. Yeah, I need to see this now too. This might be what I watched
And
tonight.
they give it 3 stars.
That's a pretty high score for TV Guide, to be honest. They're harsh.
Yeah. And now The Screaming Starts only got 2 stars. So it's going to be better than what we watched Saturday night.
Yes.
So
I'm in. You've convinced
Okay.
me on that.
great.
So we're watching that all night, I imagine, on Tuesday. And then we're on a Wednesday.
On Wednesday, we're going to take half an hour off. Maybe we're going to have like a walk. I don't know. It's winter time, but we're not going to start watching TV until 8:30, and we'll watch Magnum P.I.
Are you a big Magnum fan?
I am so big. I mean, it was like, again, one of these aspirational things, right? It was the same thing as rags to riches, like the person who has no money living in the lap of luxury because they lucked out.
Yeah.
And it's something about that reality, that dynamic, that fantasy that is just so compelling. Like you can live the life of a rich person and not be rich.
And Hawaii seems so exotic being here. Like Hawaii's the anti-Boston in all ways. You're just like,
Yes.
Look at that. Wow.
I know. It's such an exotic place.
My grandfather watched 3 things.
Yeah.
He watched Price is Right, People's Court, and what he called his Hawaii program, which was Hawaii 5-0. And he was like, had to watch. It was on every day at 5 or something. And it was like, had to watch that. So, there's some sort of appeal there that the Magnum P.I. things had. Yeah, I actually really like the new Magnum's pretty good, what I've seen of it.
I haven't seen it.
You should try to get a gig on that, get a little Hawaii trip.
I would love that. Oh my God, I know. Can you imagine like being one of these people who got to film in Hawaii all the time? Magnum P.I.
Yeah. I talked to one of the guys who directed it. And he just lived in Hawaii all year. Yeah. It was like, and he actually,
incredible.
He directed Orson Welles in a Magnum P.I. episode. And he's married to Sandra Curry, who her sister was in The Runaways, if you know that. Curry, but I was at their house and she goes, Alan, go get him the picture of you directing Orson Welles. And he's like, all right. So he has this picture.
Amazing.
And it's Orson Welles in like a throne. And he's got about 10 little Yorkie dogs all around his feet. And Alan's like directing it. And I'm like, what is with the throne and the dogs? He goes, he insisted that he had this throne and we fly his dogs out and they're not part of the story. So we had to shoot around them.
No, you're kidding.
Because it's Orson Welles. He would be like, I want my 10 Yorkies and a throne.
Like on the set?
Yeah,
like around,
yeah.
Oh my God.
So I've rewatched that episode and the shots are all framed like slightly weird because
that is super bizarre. Of all people to do that, Orson Welles, that's really weird.
I mean, this is end of his life.
I love that. Yeah.
Just making demands,
Yeah, he just couldn't give a
can we do it
anymore?
But that's a good call.
Magnum P.I. We all love Magnum P.I. And then like for the rest of it, way down, what channel is this? Hit Video USA. And only because I didn't have MTV. My family did not get cable. We were not, rich cable people. And so I had to go to my friend's house to watch MTV. But that this show called Hit Video USA is on.
Yep.
I want to know, did you watch this? What I've seen,
you would have. There was
good music.
Yeah, there was a couple syndicated hour-long. It's like MTV things, but we had Friday Night Videos, which was close, and then in Boston specifically, actually, we had V66, which was a local video.
I remember this. Yes,
which only lasted 2 years. But Hit Video, there was a few of these. There was one called Rock in America, Hit Video. Casey Kasem did a top 10 countdown videos, and it was just basically be the top 10. But this Hit Video one was super cheap, and they would not have like the good videos.
They couldn't afford the good ones.
No. So
what kind of music would I have watched on this, do you think?
It would be, I remember it being like some real, like a lot of hair metal stuff, but like, you know, like Cinderella and Down kind of hair metal, you know? You know, we're not talking Bon Jovi. It's just like, here's what we got. I don't know. Kids like music.
I might have fallen asleep watching Hit Video then.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad call.
Yeah, Wednesday would have been kind of a low TV night, but I would try it.
Yeah,
right? Hit Video, you never know.
And then Thursday things pick up. So
yeah, Thursday's weird because talking about what I want to watch now, it's totally different. I have no interest in watching the must-see TV now and I think it's just that I watch so much of it. At this point in my life, you're going to laugh at me, I would choose to watch This Old House.
I literally still watch it to this day.
Because it's so good. My dad was an architect, and growing up in Boston, it really, like, that was the reality, is like driving around seeing gorgeous old houses that, especially in the 80s, got to a point where they needed renovation.
Yeah.
And what is more satisfying than watching the ugly duckling become a gorgeous swan? And Bob Vila was so also charismatic and excellent.
This episode is cutting edge. It's home energy gauged with the help of a computer.
I know, like, that's going to be so exciting that like a computer is going to be used.
What we got here, Bob, is a computer. They had to go to MIT to get this house computer. But that show is so satisfying. I will still put it on today, and then I'll even look and be like, we're just watching a show with guys hammering for like a whole half hour.
But it's soothing. It's really reassuring.
Yeah, absolutely. So I fault you not for watching that.
And I would love This Old House. And then let me look at, I have The Imposter. I just wrote this down. Let's read the description.
It's a 2-star movie. So it's 1 star less than Hardhat and Legs.
So why am I watching this? Yeah.
But it's got a pretty good cast. You got Anthony Geary in it, who wrote most of the music for Willy Wonka and a bunch of other stuff. This is a 1984 TV movie. Billy D. Williams.
Yes. Okay. This is probably why I want to watch this. Yeah.
Some other people I haven't heard of. Penny Johnson, Jordan Chamney, Ken Oldant, and Peter Sylveston.
It's a romance, if I remember. Is that right?
Yes. This is Anthony Geary fast talks his way into a job as a high school principal, as you do, to rekindle a romance with an English teacher, and winds up battling student drug abuse.
Yes. This is why. Okay. Again. Okay. This is, now I'm remembering what drew me to this. I want to see how the student drug abuse is portrayed. That's honestly like my only... My only interest in this whole week of 80s television is to see like
how drug abuse is portrayed. I
think so.
I was surprised at that twist at the end, to be honest with you. I didn't see that coming.
No, I think I read that and I was like, I've got to watch this. This sounds too sounds too crazy. It's a romance that ends up being, I don't know. Yeah. Plus, just say no, or like, yeah.
Anthony Geary fighting drug abuse is just already, I'm like, I don't understand.
And I want to know, how does he talk his way into being a high school principal? That seems like the last job you could actually like fake.
Just walk into a high school and be like, oh, hey, I'm just a freelance principal. Pretty awesome. You might want to hire me. And they're like, let's give him a shot.
Maybe everyone was high on crack when he got hired.
That could have been.
And that's what he discovers.
But good call. Now I need to see that.
Yes.
Friday, the final night of the week.
Okay. Friday night, Family Ties is on again at 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to watch, if on the other night with Murder, She Wrote, if I couldn't flip over to watch enough Family Ties, I would probably watch it again at 7:30. I would start watching early. What's the episode? What's this? I didn't note it. What's the?
It doesn't say what it is because it's a repeat.
It's just a repeat. So
yeah, so it just doesn't even tell us. They're like, you guys don't care. You'll watch it anyway.
Yeah, and then I have Perfect Strangers.
Yes, which
again is amazing. Comedy duo. I loved it.
Mark Lynn Baker, big theater guy, big New York theater guy.
Yes. And then weirdly, after Perfect Strangers, I have no interest in watching Full House, and I don't know why. I might flip over to TV's Bloopers and Practical Jokes.
Yes, I would always
for
watch
the second half of that. of that
Always
hour.
watch that. The joke this week is great. They're playing a practical joke on Linda Carter, and it's set up by Lonnie Anderson.
Oh my God. I might even watch that instead of Perfect Strangers, depending on when. Yeah.
Because they had a show at that time called Partners in Crime where Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson played detectives together, which I would watch all day, any day now.
Yeah, but weirdly, I'm more interested in Angela Lansbury as a detective than Linda Carter as. And why is that? I don't know.
Because Linda Carter's a woman of action. You're like,
She's Wonder Woman.
Go, she'll go fight them. You're not worried for her. And Angela Lansbury's using just her smarts and her, just her personality to get these things done.
Maybe that's it. That's an idea.
Yeah. So that's not a bad call either.
Yeah. And then, so the 9 o'clock hour was really difficult because Friday at 9, I was like, there's not a whole lot on until I realized and saw this special blurb in the TV guide on Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth, which let's just bring this back around how TV guide was so much more highbrow than I remember. And they really reviewed this beautifully. And they were like, TV can be something very educational. This is fascinating. This is about, I think this is really speaks to, like, again, with Murder, She Wrote, right, why I became an actor and wanted to tell stories, which is that there is something very powerful in these archetypal ideas that sort of underpin all the stories that we tell and why we want stories told, what that is satisfying psychologically and necessary for us as a culture to together kind of gather and all watch or read or understand the same story. It's such a uniting thing. I would absolutely love to watch this Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth. Yeah, this is a PBS show. It's the myths of the first storytellers. And yeah, it's as a kid, and especially someone like you who was interested in the under the hood, I guess, of it. We didn't just watch the show. We were like, why do I like this? What about it is, so we try to reverse engineer it sort of by making our own. Me. Exactly.
Sort of, and that's how we learn structure and how things work, which is kind of fascinating. And yeah, this would have been like a college course in that, which is probably pretty amazingly put together. I know. Imagine if I'd watched this when I was a kid. Like, I wonder what that would have done. If I would have like been so bored, or if I would have gotten been into it. I have no idea. Probably a little bit of boredom, but then you might have written another 25 murder mysteries. I might have, they might have actually been better if I had watched this. Do you still have them? I do. Yes, wow. I do. I do. They're so embarrassing that I think you should put them on in COVID. I mean, you just make them at home. You make your kids be in them, and I should have scripts written in the 80s based on Murder, She Wrote. It's not quite Murder, She Wrote, but it's close. Not quite. Really not quite. And then, and then there's the big head of the class article. Is there anything you're watching in lockdown, or are there any sort of comfort shows or any shows you watched growing up you've tried to show your kids and they're like, what the hell is this? No, I haven't. They are it's sad. They watch YouTube. There's this one show they're watching now called Ghost Writer on Apple TV that they love. And it is excellent, but it's hard to, it's weird. They're very picky. Like, if it's a bad show, they just don't put up with it. And the same with I would put up with like bad TV as a kid. Yeah. And if it's not really compelling to them, if it's not characters that are interesting and storylines that are interesting, they'll just go to YouTube and learn about like fish in an aquarium or something. Like, it is they weird. Do. They want, they want to they'll learn some facts. They'll learn about like something on YouTube as opposed to watch bad TV, which we didn't have the option to do. No, because your other option is you don't watch it, and that's insane. Like, you're obviously going to watch it. You have to watch something. Yeah. But sometimes we had that sort of stumble upon culture where you'd end up seeing something you didn't watch intentionally that ends up being really good. And, sometimes put you on a path where you're like, I never would have seeked that out myself. So wrestling. I wonder. Exactly. And that's why you went into wrestling for years. We all know your storied wrestling career. Right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great talking to you, and I'm really happy that you had the time to do it. This was such a treat. I really loved looking through this. It brought back so many memories of childhood, and it was great to reflect on why I sort of so many of this stuff was foundational to what I do now. So thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. there you go. That's Anne. If someone wants to reboot Hardhat and Legs with her in it, hey, I'll play Hardhat, I'll play Legs. Maybe I could do with them, not an actor, but I'll be a part of it, whatever you want. Or just reboot it because we all should see it. But that was a ton of fun. I think you very likely had fun doing it. Listening to it. You had fun listening to it. You had fun doing Hardhat and Legs, everybody. I am such a mushmouth lately. What is going on with that? But anyway, and hopefully we can get around Magnum P.I. David Fury. We'll put in a word. He's a good dude. He's working on that show. Anyway, that's TV Guidance Counselor. We have a brand new episode next week, as we do each and every week, as we have for the last 7.5 years. We're thundering towards episode 500, which is complete insanity. But I'll be here then, and hopefully you will too, for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
Let's create a character who's missing an eye and he wears a snake. Perfect.